Yo, what's up, family? It's your brother YT. Wake 'em up, back at it again with another video. Let's talk about the Department of Education. Mass layoffs are taking place across that sector too. We know that federal workers are losing their jobs across all industries. Family, you already know what to do. And if you're brand new too, thumbs up this video so YouTube can push this content out. Smash subscribe to join the tribe. And ring the post notification bell as well. All right, let's get into it.
If you're in high school, college, grad school, or you owe student loans, listen to this. It concerns you. This isn't a drill, and I want you to stick around to the end. I'll tell you exactly how it's going to impact you. The U.S. Department of Education is going to lay off half of its more than 4,000 employees today, Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. Earlier today, the department told staff that D.C. offices would be closed on Wednesday and they would reopen on Thursday for security reasons. Employees were told to take their laptops home with them and to work remotely on Wednesday. They were also told that they would not be permitted in any education department facility on Wednesday for any reason. Now, combine this with the news that Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order directing the Secretary of Education to take steps to close the department. Maybe you think that it's not going to matter to you, but it does. The Department of Education allocates billions of dollars in aid to colleges, to universities, and to public schools at the K through 12 level. It also issues about $100 billion in student loans and more than $30 billion in Pell Grants every single year. Cutting 50% of the staff makes it more likely that colleges and universities and K through 12 schools won't receive their institutional aid. Pell Grants may not be issued. Student loans may not be funded. FAFSA information may not be sent to your school, which means that other aid may also be held up. Without that money, millions of students won't be able to start next semester on time, or maybe not at all. Colleges may not have the funds necessary to remain operational. Student loan repayment plans will expire. Forgiveness applications won't be processed. The entire system is collapsing in real time, and nobody knows what happens next. Stay with me to get all the updates, and if you need help with your student loans, you know where to find me.
I'm gonna be real. The entire system has been on the verge of collapsing for a very, very long time, and a lot of people have been aware of it. I mean, we're talking about the education system, the same system that does not teach financial literacy. The reason the American people are in the type of bind they're in right now, that's a major factor. That plays a major part. The people get the money, but they weren't taught how to manage the money. We were also taught to get jobs. School taught us to get jobs. It didn't teach us to be self-sufficient. It didn't teach us to be relying on ourselves. It didn't teach us to be investors. It didn't teach us to get portfolio or residual income. It didn't teach us about royalty income. It taught us about earned income, doing physical labor. But I'm saying that to say these same people that taught us to work hard, they didn't teach us about credit. Meanwhile, the whole country was funded by credit owed to China. The labor that was slave labor, free work. And still modern day slavery is going on. It's just not free. But it's the same thing. You're working for somewhere to stay and food to eat. It's the same thing. Just less harsh treatments these days. But burnout is real too. Just because you're not physically being abused does not mean you're not mentally being abused. It's the same thing. But not only that, we're talking about a system, the education system, remind you. We're talking about a system that, okay, you go to college and 50% of the people regret going. You go to college and you're not promised a job. You can't get a job in the field that you went for. A job doesn't even exist within those 2 to 4 years no more. They're all eliminated, terminated. The companies have downsized. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, this system has been on the verge of collapse, and it's been a failing system. They milked it as long as they could. They got out of it what they could, which was middle class, you know? They built up middle class. Middle class built the higher-ups, the rich. They made the rich get richer. Now, middle class has been eradicated. They don't need middle class no more. That's what's really going on. And education is included in that. Student loans. Many people have student loans. They made the country rich.
So the Department of Education and the student loan industry is in shambles, to say the least. Here's everything you need to know. So earlier this week, the Department of Education fired a lot of employees, about half of the workforce. They basically fired 1,300 employees, and another 600 have already accepted layoffs or buyout offers. The Department of Education only has 4,100 employees. It's the smallest department in the federal government. And these layoffs are not being spared in any department. Every single department was impacted with the reduction, even the Office of Federal Student Aid, which oversees everything student loan wise. The Ombudsman, which handles a lot of like complex administrative like disputes between student loan borrowers and the Department of Education, was really impacted. Also, Borrower Defense to Repayment, which reviews applications for borrowers who were misled or defrauded by their schools, as well as, again, the Office of Student Aid, which handles communication with borrowers, has been reduced as well. I do expect more changes to come as well, including reduced funding for FSA call centers, which people call for public service loan forgiveness, issues with their student aid account, total and permanent disability discharge. This could also impact student loan servicers who are already backlogged by paperwork and phone calls by student loan borrowers. Borrowers are already waiting multiple hours on hold when they try and call their loan servicers. Although the Trump administration and the Department of Education says that these layoffs will have minimal impacts to borrowers and they're trying to increase efficiency, this is false, because the less people at the department, the more time that people have to wait to get information, meaning less communication to borrowers about changes to their student loan programs, longer hold times to call the Department of Education or their loan servicers, longer processing times for applications or forgiveness, and little or no options if there's a problem or issue that requires intervention, such as incorrectly processed FAFSA, miscalculated monthly payments amounts, or student loan forgiveness determinations. Now, as a reminder, only Congress has the power to abolish the Department of Education, but what President Trump and the new Secretary of Education are doing is basically just diminishing the workforce at the Department of Education instead. Now, advocates at the Student Borrower Protection Center and the Student Debt Crisis Center are slamming the Department of Education for this, saying that it will only harm thousands of families and borrowers who benefit from the existence of the Department of Education. In addition to all of this, just about 2 weeks ago, they blocked access to all income-driven repayment plans by removing the applications from the student aid website, including the paper applications, and they also took down the online direct consolidation application. Also last week, President Trump issued an executive order threatening to dismantle parts of the public service loan forgiveness program, including limiting the access to PSLF for organizations that engage in certain types of activities. Now, most of these are things like criminal activities, but still. And Trump is also expected to issue an executive order in the coming days to instruct the new Secretary of Education to further wind down and dismantle the Department of Education on top of everything I just mentioned. So in case you're wondering, it's super fun to work in the student loan industry right now, but let me know if you have any questions. And as always, make sure you're following along for more student loan updates.
So it has begun. They actually got rid of half of the workforce of the Department of Education. They actually did it, right? And so I'm sure that's not the last stop, right? Because like I told you guys before, the whole point is to break it until, right, like there's nothing left, right? For those of you who did not get your FAFSA done or dragged your feet on everything, yeah, you're going to experience a lot of wait time. I'm actually really nervous to see what happens this next part of the year, because I always get the stragglers, the ones that waited and waited and waited and waited, and now we gotta see what's what. Yeah, when are the Avengers coming?
I think it's so important for us now more than ever to talk about the labor market history and also workforce history, and speak about this from a historical perspective, especially because we are seeing mass layoffs in the federal market. And the question pondering is, what is next? What is going to happen? Where are all these people going to go? Now, looking at the situation holistically, and when I say the situation, I'm referencing the United States of America, I can hypothesize that the federal workers are all going to go private, or for the most part, a majority of those workers in that workforce is going to enter the private sector. Because right now, as a country, this administration is prioritizing corporate interests, and the skill set that is required for a lot of these roles that the federal workers were doing is also in high demand in the private sector. Because we are seeing the dismantling of a lot of federal agencies, especially from the workforce and resource-based perspective, again, we're seeing our necessities become privatized. Think about schools. They're literally handing out vouchers to private schools in the state of Texas. And what happens when you put a strain on someone's personal life? Specifically speaking, a strain on their financial well-being and their livelihood. You're going to go where the job openings are. I do want to name and say going into the private sector is not easy, okay? Most people don't even know the names of the companies, let alone the how or understand the wherewithal it takes to get into these companies and into these businesses, especially when they have direct pipelines from the top institutions and universities, not only in the nation, but in the world. I also could foresee people going into the international market because these employees have such a strong and niche skill set when it comes to federal work, but especially when we start niching down the different types of agencies that people worked in.
Let me just ask this. How long is it going to take our people to see the writing on the wall completely, to see things for what they are? If jobs are becoming a thing of the past, we're seeing mass layoffs, not just federal workers, the biggest of companies laying off. Are we going to keep jumping from company to company, big company to big company, when we see that the economy is taking a toll on them? They can't even sustain right now. So how can we expect them to sustain us in our lives? That's just me. Maybe my way of thinking is just way off. I don't know. But I would just look at it like that. Clearly, something else needs to take place. Clearly, I need to do something else. Clearly, this is not working. This is not the path that I need to be following any longer because it's guiding me to here. And it's guiding me to nowhere. So if I want to continue going nowhere, let me keep following this route. But if I want to actually get somewhere, let me take a different route. But like I said, maybe that's just my delusional way of thinking. I don't know.
Here's how the education department layoffs are going to affect students with disabilities. 1,300 employees have been cut. That means there will be far fewer staff members to finish the 12,000 pending federal investigations into civil rights violations at schools, half of which involve disability. There will also be far fewer employees to review and distribute the research money for effective ways to educate autistic children and children with severe intellectual disabilities. Another issue is that students with disabilities who are trying to get test accommodations won't be able to get the accommodations in time. The provision of education to students with disabilities is complex and it needs expert personnel to interpret and carry out the statute's requirements. Disabled students are going to have a harder time growing up and achieving the same educational goals and dreams that we all have. And more than 300 employees in the Federal Student Aid Office were also terminated, so good luck with student loans.
Yesterday, the Department of Education laid off over 1,300 employees, nearly half their workforce. This isn't just about jobs, it's about your child's educational rights and services. The important thing to note here is that when the Secretary of the Department of Education says that this is the Department of Ed's final mission, she's talking about dismantling the very system that enforces special education rights and protections. The immediate impact that we see from these cuts is the fact that the cuts aren't just random. They're eliminating staff who oversee critical programs, including special education compliance, civil rights enforcement, and federal funding distribution. Think about it this way. Who ensures that your child's IEP or 504 plan is followed when there's no one to enforce these rights? The claim is that the department will continue to deliver all statutory programs, but here's the reality. With half the workforce gone, 6 regional offices closing, and the consolidation of the oversight departments, there's no way to maintain the current level of protection and support. They're not just reducing staff, they're reducing their ability to protect your child's educational rights. I always try and drive home the impact to you as parents. Without federal oversight and enforcement, schools may begin to interpret disability rights differently. Federal funding could be delayed or disrupted, civil rights complaints might go uninvestigated, and special education monitoring could become inconsistent. This isn't just about making sure the department is efficient, What's happening is essentially eliminating protections that took decades to establish.
Big cuts are hitting the education department. 1,300 employees just got the axe as part of Felon Trump's plan to shrink the agency. This is just the start, with more layoffs expected across other federal departments. The felon has long said he wants to dismantle the education department. He called it bloated and ineffective. Hey, he would know, it's just like him. Of course, the felon has no evidence to support that claim. He makes his decision based on how he feels at that moment. The new education secretary says this is about efficiency, and that's all bullshit. MAGA needs to keep its movement going, so they need the youth to be as ignorant as they are, if not more, to keep MAGA going. They can't have people think critically because we see through their BS. So now we have to get ready for incompetence and worry about what happens to student loan management, Pell Grants, and civil rights protections. Offices in major cities like New York and Chicago are already shutting down, and staff were told to stay home for security reasons. The felon can't close the agency without Congress, but he's making deep cuts anyway. I wonder if they're going to put MAGA schools up instead. It's just the same thing as putting on Fox all day. Believe in truth. I'll be back with more of it.
Now, I had to put this clip in here just for some giggles, some laughs, on top of, okay, we may have mixed opinions about this, right? But I think the education system is ineffective. I'm going to say it again. We were not taught financial literacy. We weren't taught anything we weren't really taught any real skills, anything we actually need. We were taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Like, come on now. Very ineffective. That's very inaccurate. We could talk about us. We could talk about us being here before that, right? The whole school system is built around getting a 9 to 5. When I was in kindergarten, I remember them giving us books, asking us which career out of these books do we think we would be interested in. I chose none of them. I thought I was going to the NBA at that time. Either that or being a musician / entrepreneur, right? But when you speak like that, they try to talk you out of that and say that's unrealistic. Focus on getting a job, right? Focus on something that's stable, reliable, realistic. Well, if this is what it's built around, and we're seeing pretty much nobody can get a job right now. Everybody's struggling to get jobs. We're seeing mass layoffs. Even federal workers are being laid off. Government workers. But we're going to listen to the school systems that are controlled by the government. Now, I know this president is a part of the government, but he's a businessman before president. But I'm not into politics. I really don't care. What I'm seeing is what's going on. I'm seeing the real of what's going on. You cannot tell me that this system is not failing, that it hasn't failed our people. Student loans are at all-time high. Most people can't get a house. They can't get a car. They can't move forward in life because they were young and they got tricked into getting student loans. I get emails every single week about this, all the time. Once again, maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm out my mind. Maybe my way of thinking is different than everybody else's, and that's fine. But hey, if you think like me, then let me know. Share your thoughts below. If you don't think like me, hey, we're open for debate. Appreciate y'all, man. I love y'all. It's your brother YT. Peace. And to my Hebrew family, shalom. We catch y'all on the next one.